this is a pair of NES controllers that Nintendo was selling on their website for people who have, well, a year of their online service. So you can't actually buy these without having that, and then you buy it specifically from them, and Nintendo will actually ship it to you themselves. It's a whole thing, and I assume the reason they did this was so that there wouldn't be confusion in stores, since these are specifically supposed to be for Nintendo's online NES catalog, the games that you get if you have the online service. So today we're going to unbox them, we're going to check them out with a Switch, and then we're also going to open one of these up and compare it to the NES Classic Nintendo controller, as that is, I guess, the last time they really designed and released it, because I have a feeling that these are very, very similar to those, so it'll kind of give you, I guess, an idea as to how it feels. Alright, so let's go ahead and unbox these things. Now, I know there's not much going on here because I opened it up originally to charge them, and I realized that there's really nothing in here at all. They do have some instructions on the back as to how to attach them to your Switch. They're pretty much set up to only go on one way, and it's pretty hard to mess that one up as the release grips are at certain points, the button you press for it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a very minimalistic box. Not much, it's just the Nintendo logo at the top, Nintendo Online here, and the Nintendo Entertainment System controller. So, not a lot there. Both are covered in plastic bags, if we can get one of these guys out. There we go. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, they don't really give you anything else outside of that. That's all that comes with it. So, we're going to put that to the side, and let's get these guys out of their bags here. So, they are designated, so we have a right and a left, obviously. And you can see on the back, they have the tops where you press to release. So they do look very, very, very much like the Nintendo Classic controller, as you can kind of see here. Let me unknot that. There we go. As you can see here, it looks pretty much the same as we would expect, because again, I have a feeling it used the same molding, pretty much the same everything. They probably use the same buttons, same D-pad, same rubber for start select. They just changed up a few things when it comes to being able to be wireless, and of course having the sleds on the side railings to attach to the Switch. Nonetheless though, we will compare those right after I do what everyone probably wants to do with these things and make their Switch look absolutely ridiculous by attaching them like this. So now I'm ready to play Smash Bros. Perfectly. Alright, now that I've actually done this, it really does look absolutely ridiculous to have this in this setup. However, what's very interesting about this situation is Nintendo has accounted for this happening. In fact, if we actually jump in here and start moving around, this D-pad flips, as in it's set up in this kind of position. So instead of it being normal where it's like up and down, this has now become left and right, and up and down as left and right as it would normally be in that configuration. So they have kind of figured out that you would probably do this, although I don't know why you would want to, as I mean, look at this thing. Why would we do this? I mean, I guess you could kind of stand it up like that, and now it's up, I guess. I don't know. It's more funny looking than anything, as this is not at all practical. It's mostly for charging when it's in the dock, and that's been explained several times by them. However, I've already seen several people attempt to play a couple of different games with it, so you know what? Why not? Let's try playing Smash. Well, I can at least navigate the menu all right with this guy. Let's see. We'll go into just regular Smash, and we'll see what happens here. I don't really know what all the buttons are going to be. I know I can get through just by pressing A and just kind of go through there, but I don't know how I'm going to control this. I do know that this is A. Let me pick, all right, sure, Mario. Start, okay, yeah, start, still works fine there. So I know this is, I guess this is plus, that should be minus, A, and then maybe B? Let's see. So that works, oh, wait a minute, nope, what is, oh, that would be an issue. That would be a bit of an issue. Okay, so I don't actually have a way to move because the analog stick is not at all, oh, I'm in trouble, is not at all mapped. So these are this is normal D-pad here, of course, so these are just his taunts. I'm okay. So, doesn't work well with Smash, but how does it work with the NES games? So I guess we'll just go ahead and go into the standard configuration here, and it does feel good. The D-pad feels fine. It reminds me very much of the NES Classic controller. Let's see, where is Metroid? Let's do Metroid. It looks pretty good here. It does have R and L at the top for the suspend menu, so you can press these together. It says there, and it goes to the suspend menu that you normally press, like ZR is for it. So let's go in here, and kind of at a weird angle looking at it, but I think I can play a little bit here and kind of get an idea as to how it plays exactly as you would imagine. And it's wireless, which is nice. I mean, that is a good quality of life feature when, if you want to play with, I guess, a GameCube controller, or otherwise you have to get like a Pro controller. But again, if you're playing with the Joy-Con grip, you're probably okay as well. But it is nice to have a solid D-pad here, where something like the Pro controller also is heavily questioned about its D-pad and its accuracy. There's no denying something like a true Nintendo D-pad, especially with how close this feels right now to the Classic controller. You're pretty much in good company there. So if you like your Nintendo Classic controller, these actually will be pretty cool for you, especially if you're playing and getting a kick out of the NES games for now. Yeah, you probably will like this and actually get some use out of both these controllers. That said, $60 is pretty expensive, considering you can get something like that 8BitDo control or adapter, or just an 8BitDo SN30, for example, and save yourself some money. But if you want, I guess, the actual experience made by Nintendo, well, there you go. You just got to make sure you have a year subscription. Something I noticed is we don't actually have a home button on this. One other thing is you can't turn the Switch on with this controller, which means you need to have a Joy-Con set up or your Pro controller next to you to then turn it on and then grab this, or of course walk up, turn your Switch on. That's fine too. However, I wish that wasn't the case. I wish you could turn this on, whether it's just by pressing start or maybe a button at the top, and then it'll just turn the Switch on like a home button would. Something else I've noticed is getting out of this game is not great, since I have to go to game selection. And at that point, I'm not 100% sure how I can get out of here, since, okay, there we go. Home menu, then you press R. So you don't have an actual home button, obviously. So you go back to this menu, then you press R. Now you're back in the selection here. So it's a little bit more of a process. It's not straight up pressing a home button from the game. It's going here, pressing R, and now you're back to your home menu. Well, now that we've seen how they've performed, let's actually start diving in and checking out more about the hardware here. So first we'll go ahead and weigh these guys. Well, at least this one, we'll weigh one of them next to the NES Classic controller. So if you have one of these, this should give you an idea. This one's 66.6 grams. And then this one is 85 grams, so it is noticeably heavier, but I think a lot of it has to do with the battery inside, and of course maybe the extra components when it comes to it being wireless, and then you do have that railing on the top. So there are extra things they're adding to that weight. Let's start taking this guy apart and see what's different in here. And one thing that I noticed right away that's different, that is very annoying, is they did use tri-wing screws back here. So this uses Phillips, this uses tri-wing, mostly because I know Nintendo probably likes to annoy me. So there are 6 of these tri-wings on the back, and then I think that's mostly it. I think at that point we're in. So these are pretty straightforward. They don't seem to strip very easily from what I'm telling right now. Sometimes you'll get tri-wings that just want to strip completely and you can't unscrew them. These seem to be a bit higher quality than something that I've seen in like a DS Lite, for example. Even a 3DS, these seem higher quality, so that's at least good. Okay, so all the screws are now out. This should just open up, and we'll see how the railing is held there. Okay, so it's very similar to a Joy-Con. Again, it's not really surprising there how this attaches with a ribbon cable, and then you have the railing set up very, very similarly. And we can actually look at the battery here as well, which is a 525 milliamp hour battery. That'll actually probably give you some decent battery life then. That's actually a fairly sized battery, good sized battery for this setup. Let's go ahead and peel the battery, and then I want to get the board out so we can take a look at something like the D-pad. What's interesting about this setup is there are 3 screws holding this board down, and it also held this battery and holder down. So while the battery is glued to this holder, the holder is just screwed in. So they used minimal amounts of screws inside. They've pretty much doubled up in order to hold this down and to also hold the board down. So as soon as I've unscrewed that, the board pretty much lifts directly up. And at this point, we could take a look at what people are very curious about, which is something like the D-pad, and so far it looks pretty solid. We're going to compare it to the D-pad that is in this classic controller, which I'll take apart real quick, but it has a very large kind of bump at the bottom here where we normally need it to be, so right in there. And you can see that. So it already has a nice little pivot point, and that's probably why it feels so good compared to like the Pro controller, for example. We also have what appears to be our wireless chipset here, and then our antenna that actually runs all the way up here to this corner at the top. So good placement for it as well, since you're really not going to have your hands over that too much. It's not where your palms would touch, more so where you might have your fingers to grab and touch where the R and L is. So that's actually the best place they could probably put that antenna, and again, you should have decent range out of it. Okay, so now up to the plastic controller. Again, 6 screws at the bottom. This time they're Phillips head screws, which is very much appreciated, Nintendo. I wish you would do that for most of your stuff at this point. And once we get these out, we should have the shell, and we should be able to look directly at it. No battery will be in here, of course, and no wireless module, so we'll see if the boards are similar otherwise. All right, so with the last few screws out, we can open this guy up, and well, you can see immediately that it's completely different. It's not at all the same inside. This looks like a much older type of board, right? A very simple board, you could even say. But it is using similar parts in terms of A and B. Those are pretty much the same. Start and select are pretty much the same. And then the D-pad. That's, of course, the question. I can tell you the molding is exactly the same for the rubber on the bottom. Great. Now the D-pad. The big question mark is always the D-pad. The board itself, a very simple board. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't need to pull power. It doesn't need to connect to the Switch. It doesn't really need to do much of anything other than just take the button inputs and relay them to the NES Classic. So, this D-pad and this D-pad are pretty much identical. In fact, looking at them, they're really not different at all. They've pretty much lifted the D-pad directly from the NES Classic, as we would hope they would, and moved it over for use with the Switch wirelessly. That's actually really cool, and I am very happy that Nintendo has provided a good D-pad for the Switch in some way. It's just more or less a shame that it has to be done through their website, and you have to have the online service. And of course, because of that, people are already scalping these things, so, you know, good stuff there. So there's not much else to do other than put these together and kind of give my final thoughts on them. And those are the Nintendo Entertainment System controllers that you can use with the NES Online Library. Now, is it really worth getting for 60 bucks? Probably not, mostly because there are other options out there from other companies that provide pretty much the same thing, just cheaper. Look to something like 8BitDo, for example, and you'll find out very quickly that you can get them easily, and, well, they work for other devices as well. But if you are someone who likes to collect these type of things, or maybe you just want the official first-party controller and you don't really mind paying extra, I can at least tell you the build quality inside is good, and, well, this is probably the best D-pad Nintendo has developed and produced for the Switch. Definitely over something like the Pro controller, and, well, the Joy-Con technically doesn't have a D-pad. So let me know what you guys think about these controllers. Again, they're $60. I think it's like $5 shipping, and then, of course, it's $20 for the online service. Let me know what you think about these. Would you like to see Nintendo, if they do something like Super Nintendo, for example, do something similar like this for the Super Nintendo controller? And do you think you'd find any use with these being attached in handheld mode? Because Nintendo accounted for it, and technically it does work. Make sure you guys like the video if you liked it, dislike it. If not, get subscribed for all different types of accessory teardowns and all kinds of game news. I'll see you guys in the next video.